It's not even quite 10 o'clock yet. I notice we've got quite a few people already logged on to the webinar, but we'll probably give it another, I don't know, 3-4 minutes to make sure everybody gets a chance that wants to see the beginning of this to log on appropriately. So interesting. We're all probably sitting at some various form of home right now, listening to this. I'm not sure about you guys, but having the kids at home all the time and doing schoolwork, and the weekends seem to be looking like the weekdays because we're not taking off and going to work. We're still in the same spot pretty much. I'm not sure if everybody else in the same boat, probably are. That blending feeling that's going on right now. Also, there's this haircut issue. I'm not sure how that looks on this, but haven't had one of those since on February. So, we're all probably due for that too. Seen some interesting home haircuts, if anybody's attempted that. But this is all a different time we got going on right now. I'll give us a few more minutes here. Yeah, I had, for those of you that do have teenage kids and others, it's interesting doing the homeschool thing right now. My 16-year-old actually, let's see, when was this? This is the end of last week, and I'm trying to do work in the kitchen, and he comes up and wants some help with math and asks me if I can help him do some factoring of, let me think if I can remember this, factoring of perfect square trinomials. I'm like, oh, sure, I got that. I got that. Maybe in my engineering school days at Cal Poly 30 years ago, but all kinds of different stuff going on from the homeland. So that's part of what we'll talk about today as well, is just some of the things that are challenges, both from a work standpoint. And I had yesterday, we're rarely in the office right now because of the stay-at-home orders, but I had the engineer for HPE Nimble come into our office to do a webinar that we co-hosted, but it's like, oh, I thought you'd be doing it from your kitchen or your den or something. But he lives in a fairly rural part of the state in the area, and they don't have fiber to the house. So his Wi-Fi is intermittent at best, and since everyone is staying at home, everyone's streaming video, you got Netflix, you got kids doing e-learning, school stuff, and all of a sudden that, which is a challenge for everybody, that Wi-Fi may not be as work reliable as it has in the past from if you're working at home. So all kinds of interesting things. Great solutions out there, but most of them are requiring some type of Wi-Fi connectivity that's stable. So 10:02. Wow, we've got quite a few people signed in now. I mean, we give it like 2 more minutes at the most, and then we'll go ahead and get this started. In fact, maybe just to keep it, we want to keep this short, relative. We're not going to take a lot of people's time this morning on this. It's going to be, you'll have a chance to ask questions and stuff along the way. So that's the only thing that may make this longer than other times, but I don't want it just to be a presentation. We actually have worked on how do we recreate a live in-person lunch and learn that we do a lot of all across the West. How do we make that same experience happen as a webinar? And so that's myself speaking live here, doing introductions, doing that type of stuff, and then having the ability for you guys to ask questions. And we want to make sure that you get that same type of feeling as you go through this as a live event. I think, I don't know, Wade, I think we'll get started.
We good?
I think so. I mean, that's quite a few attendees. I'm excited to see that everybody's taking the time. Like I said, I want this to be effective for everyone. So let's just go ahead to that kind of next page we've got. Is the next one the introduction?
Yep.
Okay, well, there you go. So my name is Jeff Rogers. I'm the CEO and founder of Big Green IT. For a lot of the attendees that are online, I've met before in the past, or we've worked on projects with you, and there's quite a few people we haven't worked with as well. So I'm glad that everyone could join. Like I started to say, this is if we were normally here, you guys can see me, so I'll do the air quotes. Normally doing this, it would be an in-person, live event where we get to interact with each other and each other's colleagues and people from the industry, and perhaps drawing stuff on whiteboards and everything else. So we're going to do the best we can here with the this live webinar series. We didn't want to wait until we could all get back in person and have these group events, because I don't know if any of us know when that's going to be next. But the information that we're going to go through today and on some subsequent webinars we have in this series are all pertinent right now, and so we wanted to get this information out to everyone. So we're going to talk about, primarily today, we're going to talk about teams. We're going to talk about a bit about remote workforce. I know you're hearing a lot of that these days, but there's also a lot of kind of FUD, and we want to kind of cut through some of that stuff. So what to expect for the next, we're going to probably do 25 to 30 minutes. Normally these would be an hour and a half, but people want to ask questions. It might extend it a little bit. I will do a couple of poll questions here in a couple seconds, just to get an idea of where everybody's at with Teams and Office 365 and such. And then, like I said, there is I'm not sure where it is on your dashboard, but somewhere there's a place you can ask questions. I'll kind of moderate, even though we have someone else to be doing the speaking presentation, and see if I can interrupt with questions that are pertinent to the topic at that moment. And then the other thing is, you're welcome to obviously take as many notes as you want, but know that the slides that you will see, we'll send out a follow-up email sometime, probably tomorrow, at latest the next day, and it'll have links to the actual slides and some other stuff as well we'll talk about at the end. So I think I'll do a quick thing of just who we are, so you know where our background is, and kind of the, I don't know, it adds a little bit of credibility to all the stuff we're going to talk about. Wade, do you have that slide next?
Yes.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. So I'm not going to read through all this. I just want, for the people that don't know who we are, just to understand the type of business that we do. We're headquartered in Rockland, which is near Sacramento, California. We also have offices in San Diego and Los Angeles. We work primarily, we call it hybrid IT, but we're primarily in the space of Microsoft. We're a direct partner, a gold partner with Microsoft, working with everything from Azure, lift and shift, and everything else related to cloud in that direction. Office 365, really big for us, and of course Teams, which comes into the collaboration plan part of it. Some of the customers, just to give you guys an idea of the size, everything from a few hundred users to 8 to 10,000 users that we worked with for migrations and everything related to Microsoft. I do have one quote I'm going to read, actually, because this just happened, and if I can move all of these little dashboard things out of the way so I can see it. So I can't see part of it, so I'll try to go through. Since it was big, it's a quote from Wood Rogers. So Wood Rogers is an engineering firm based in Sacramento. This is from their CIO. He says, just wanted to pass along our sincere thanks for the help you provided during this, and I assume that says COVID-19 or something, pandemic. We have teams working now, very much appreciated, and you guys are killing it. Thanks. The reason I bring that one up is because that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. Teams is that cool collaboration piece that perhaps a year ago, 2 years ago, people would want to move to Office 365 because they want to get Exchange out of their environment. Let's get it up to the cloud. They're probably happy they did now because of all of that. But also, I would tell people there's this other thing that you're going to get once you move to 365 called Teams, that it's unbelievable how much collaboration and work you can get done. So Wood Rogers was a company that had gone to that point, had done the other things, had done Exchange, had done OneDrive, kind of not sure about the Teams, and then they called us once the pandemic happened and said, hey, how do we turn this on? Can we turn this on? But yet we'd like to restrict people from going hog wild with it until we have a way to have process and have compliance and so forth. And so we went into this and we found a way through our engineering resources to actually turn on Teams for voice and for chat, and yet restrict some of it, some of the other ones, until they could catch up. So we did that whole thing in 48 hours, and they were quite happy with it. And so that's why we use that particular quotation. So I'm going to do two poll questions real quick, so we'll give this a shot. My first time at doing this, so I'm going to see if I open this correctly. It says
You
select.
got it, Jeff.
I know. Thanks for the encouragement. Here we go. So we can answer that. It's ticking along at the numbers that I kind of almost expected for this particular question. That's probably enough time for everybody to answer. And Wade, as I kind of expected for this topic, it's about 85% that are currently using Office 365 and about 15, well, it's about 80-20 now of a mix. Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to go ahead and close that one. And I am going to now try the next one, which is, are you using Teams currently? Might get similar, but let's find out. Launch. And, okay, thus the people joining this particular call for this reason, or this webinar, it's about 50-50, Wade. So 80-20 on using some form of Office 365 and really close, 55-45, but really close to half and half that are currently using Teams. Okay, well, thank you. I'm going to close that. All right. Thank you, everyone, for participating in the poll. I'm going to turn it over now to Wade, who's going to be the meat of the presentation, and I will moderate any questions that come in. So I'd like to introduce Wade Walker. He is our Director of Cloud Services and broadcasting from his beautiful home near San Diego. Go ahead,
Thank you,
Wade.
Jeff. All right, and you can see my screen now too. So Jeff and I wanted to make sure everybody could see us and see what we're doing in our work environment. Jeff's up in the Sacramento Rockland area, as he mentioned. I'm down in Carlsbad, California, which is about 30 minutes north of San Diego. I'm going to turn off my camera after this, so when I'm looking up and down, I don't drive everybody crazy, but wanted to say hi to everybody. Thanks for joining us. And now let me stop sharing my webcam. And away we go. So again, Wade Walker, Director of Cloud Technologies here at Big Green IT, and I hope everybody's staying safe and doing their best to navigate through these times. Thanks a lot actually for filling out the poll. We wanted to make sure we could customize this presentation on the fly based on the poll results. And based on what we got here, that about 85% Office 365 users, 15% that aren't, and about a 50-50 Teams ratio of people that are using it and aren't using it.
Hey, Wade, I'm actually,
Yes.
I didn't think I would interrupt you so early in this presentation, but there's a pertinent question that I know that we'll get to, but it really does, it's something that everyone visually sees right now because it seems to be all over the place. And I'm sure you've got this somewhere in the presentation, but one came across very early that just said basically is Teams an alternative to Zoom. So I know that we'll talk about that down the road, but just remind ourselves that that is one of the other possible platforms out there, and we'll, I'm sure, about that some more. Okay.
Yep. So the answer is yes. Teams is a alternate platform to Zoom. I was actually on a call yesterday we're on one of Microsoft's partner advisory councils, and there was a partner advisory council urgent emergency meeting yesterday to talk about Teams and how Microsoft can improve Teams so that the explosive growth of Teams gets all the features that people are asking for. And obviously Microsoft wants some of that Zoom market share. So it's a hot topic right now for the Microsoft community. Here's an overview of what we're going to discuss today. We're going to hit on the Teams app. So we kind of made this one, we moved it up in the priority list because of the poll results. So thank you for that. We're going to hit on licensing, a little bit of the home network environment, that we're all working in today. How to secure Teams conversations, meetings more, Teams governance strategy, and then using a relatively new thing from Microsoft called Teams Advisor, which is sort of a guide, a quick start to help you maximize your Teams deployment.
Let's Wade, let's make sure everyone can see your screen. I did get one gentleman that said can't see Wade's screen. That was a couple minutes ago. Let me check. There are a couple people here in the office to make sure that we can be seen. Yes. Okay. Okay. Wait, I checked with a couple people and it seems to be coming across, so I'm not
Okay,
sure. This one gentleman, Jeremy, might have to reload something. So anyway, continue on. Thank you.
perfect, no worries. So here's a picture of the Teams client. Here's a screenshot, or I mean, a mock-up from Microsoft that hits on a lot of things from the Teams client. We're going to actually jump into the Teams client itself, a live version of the Teams client. But it's important here at a high level to see, if we go to the upper left, what the Teams client is, what it looks like, how you have, every team has a channel. So you'll hear the words Teams a lot, you hear the word channels a lot. You can use Teams to chat. So just like people are using Slack and other platforms for Teams and channels and chat, you have that in here. You can also use Teams for presentations. So we'll show that in a little bit. You can share files in there. You can connect to external resources that aren't within Teams, so on and so forth. So I'm going to jump into that Teams app right now. If it pops up correctly, I'm going to refresh just in case it asks for a password. And Jeff and everybody else, can I get some confirmation that people can see this live Teams?
I see it on mine.
Yeah, yes, Wade.
All right, perfect. So thanks for the feedback here. One of the things that we have access to at Big Green IT is demo type Office 365 tenants. So this is a tenant that gets used a lot with a lot of similar names. You'll see people, Megan Bowen, she's kind of famous in the Office 365 demo tenant environment. And so this is a live version of the Teams client. So for the 15% of you or so that aren't using Office 365, we'll get to the licensing in a second of what it takes to get Teams. And then for the 50% of you that aren't using Office Teams at all, this is what it looks like. This is actually the web version of the client. There's also a client you can download, and I'll get to that in a second. But until then, what I wanted to show is in essence a live demonstration of Teams. This is a live tenant at Office 365. So this is being used just like any other Office 365 tenant. And for example, I'll go to the chat here. This is a live chat. So let me go and message Megan again. Hi again. All right, and you can see Wade W at Big Green IT was typing, and obviously I kind of fat fingered that. So my message was hi again, and Megan can, send something back, and we can use emojis, we can use GIFs, we can use all these little things to send and do, and they can come back. So using chat in Teams is pretty darn easy. And as you see here, this person, I'm logged in as Megan to this Teams instance, and she's communicating to me. I'm kind of talking about myself in the third person. That's kind of weird. But she's communicating to me and I'm communicating back to her. And it's just an easy way to chat to internal or external people. If it's external, it says up here. And then here's some of the prefabricated content that comes in this demo where Megan is able to chat. So it's really easy to chat. And then if you wanted to, if you look in the upper right here, if Megan was chatting with Alex and wanted to get in a video call or a audio call, she could easily do that. Or if she wanted to add people to this conversation, she could do that as well. Chat's pretty straightforward, pretty easy to use here. I'm going to click next on Teams. These things are called teams. They can all be collapsed, and these are teams, and you can subscribe teams. You can, bottom left here, you can join or create teams. There's all the things we can talk about in being in a team. And then within the teams are the channels. And if you look at these and I expand these, you can see these are each of the individual channels. And every team gets a general channel. So you can see here, hey, as a channel, you can chat in this channel as well, and type in stuff, and then everybody who comes into this channel will then see this chat. So the nice thing is this persistent chat stays persistent within this channel, and anybody who comes into this channel later will see all of the chat and all the other messages, all the files that are being shared into this channel. So it's a nice way to have a construct of conversations confined to each of your individual channels. I went in and changed this channel a little bit. So it's kind of neat when you have a channel. Each of these channels has a whole bunch of tabs across the top here. You can see I'm moving my mouse. You can add additional tabs to a channel. You can add things that are built into Office 365. Most of these things look very familiar here if you're an Office 365 user. For those that aren't, these are just, files and services that are built into Office 365. You can also add external tabs. So if you're using Box for file storage, if you're using Trello for some project management, the list goes on. There's a whole bunch of tabs we can add in here. Or you can just quite simply click the website and add a new website and type in a website, and then that's your website. So what I did on this particular channel is before this presentation, I just added the Big Green IT website. So I went to that add website link, clicked on it, typed in the URL, boom. Now you have access to a website. So if you think about if you've got payroll with ADP, or you're using Salesforce.com, or you're using, whatever the wide variety of services you might be using, you can add them across this list here and have as many tabs as you want. Shifting over a little bit towards calendar, Teams will show you your calendar. You can see here the calendar, and if you have meetings scheduled, you see your meetings, and then you can set a new meeting, or you can automatically meet now with somebody if you want to do a private meeting and do a video call or a voice call. And then if you're using Teams as your phone system, so think Ring Central, think 8x8, think some of those other phone systems. If you're using Teams as your phone system, and we are using Teams as our phone system at Big Green IT, your entire phone system is in here, meaning all your phone calls are listed here, voicemails, and if you want to call somebody, you click call the contact, and then you can see the contact. So lastly, bottom left here, you can add apps to Teams. So a lot of companies, ourselves included, are working on apps that are added to Teams that are specific towards your teams or your environment. So I'm gonna go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was just going to point out as well, my perspective on a lot of things is that we have some commonality as companies that might have channels that are a general, which is for everyone. Everyone has a marketing channel, generally a sales channel. For us as an IT company, we have an engineering channel, and then you have various tabs within that. And those groups seem very logical. We're working with some casino gaming folks that might have something that, would look like tabs that might, or channels that might be for the, the slot marketing team, or the table games team, or the cashier team. So there's things that you can put all together there. But one that I saw the other day for a very large organization that I really wouldn't have thought of is where you have people from various departments that all need to collaborate together, meaning not within the department, but inter-department. And one of those was a fundraiser. They do a fundraiser once a year. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars that they raise, but it needs it's perfect for teams and for a channel, because they can have a person or two from marketing, the person that's in charge of it. You can have a person from HR. They have a person from facilities, because the event is an on-site event and they need facilities involved. If it's graphic arts and they are designing the flyer and people have to comment on it, they can put it into the file in that particular thing. So when that example, which was a real world one, was given to me, I'm like, that's perfect. That even explains more about the collaboration efforts and what you can do within the Teams client. So, and before I go on, there's a couple of questions here within Teams, or within this, that might be pertinent, Wade. One of them, Lynn might have to read, because it says, what is the accessibility access with Teams? I'm not exactly sure what that means. But then there's a couple other ones. Could Teams replace or complement Ring? Does that say Ring Central? Yeah, which you did mention a second ago. Another one is a case. How do you make a case to ditch Slack in favor of Teams? That could be a whole webinar in itself, but we can talk about that a little bit. And then there is a comment here about Zoom being kind of ahead of Teams when it comes to usability and things like that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that too, because I think there are some things sometimes you have to give and take. One solution might have an easier user interface, and the other solution might have, HIPAA compliance or something else that you need that's a requirement. So I don't want to inundate you with too many topics at once, Wade, but those were a couple
Right.
that came.
And then we'll go over these questions near the end.
Okay.
But I'm going to hit a few of them right now. The UX view from Jonathan, you're right. Microsoft recognizes that Zoom can have, a lot of people in a video screen. Right now, Teams does 4. Either later this week or early next week, it'll go to 9 with plans to grow. Adding more accessibility, I can hit on that later. Can Teams replace or complement Ring Central? The answer is yes. We actually moved from Ring Central to Teams, so we are 100% off of Ring Central and onto Teams. Can Shannon with the question to block chats at external users? Yes, you can control guest access, and we're going to get to that a little bit more in governance later on in this. Does Team integrate with existing phone systems? Yeah, there are some integration steps. We talk about those other words later. And yes, Teams can record and archive webinars. So there's a recording feature in a Teams call, and then it saves to your Office 365 environment. And we can hit more of those at the end.
Yeah,
let me get back. The last thing I wanted to show right here on the Teams client is the sync button. All these files are stored in SharePoint. You can synchronize them to your computer. And when I used to travel a lot, and hopefully I can travel more, this was important to me because when I'm flying on a plane or area not with connectivity, I could still edit files, make updates, and then as soon as I was back online, everything got synchronized. So out of the live Teams client demo, and back to the presentation. So again, this is that busy picture I brought up before of all the things that Teams does, which makes Teams a little interesting because it does what Slack does, it does what Zoom does, and it does more. So there's a lot in the Teams environment. Next up is licensing. Oh, and I think Jeff mentioned this earlier. We're going to send everybody a link to this afterwards, so don't think you have to write all this stuff down. We've got links to all this, and you'll be getting an email after this with a link to this presentation. And at the end, I have a lot of hyperlinks to all of the stuff that I'm presenting. This is a list right now of the Office 365 licenses that include Teams. For those of us that live in this ecosystem, a number of these licenses are going to be changing. So Office 365 Business Essentials is going to become Microsoft 365 Business Standard, and there's some changes coming on that are just cosmetic. They're just product name changes. But here's the list. And then next, Microsoft's made a huge effort in the past 6 weeks because of what's going on in our industry to really make available a lot of free trials. So everything you see here is a listing of all the free trials that are available right now that include Teams. This one up here that's in yellow just came out. It's kind of known as the COVID-19 free trial for Microsoft. 6 months of what's called an E1 license, which includes Teams, it includes Exchange Online email, it includes SharePoint for files, it includes so many other features, and you can get it for 6 months for free. The other trials that are listed here are can be added on. So if you're a large organization looking to use Teams, you never use it and you don't want to pay for it yet, you can we can use these trials. Contact us afterwards. We can help get these trials started with you, and we can combine them. At the bottom here, also there's a G1 trial, which is for government customers, an A1 trial for education customers, and then a nonprofit trial. So Microsoft's really canvassing the list of free trials that are being made available for all of us to leverage Teams, and especially now when we're all at a work from home environment. Moving to a work from home environment, I know it's been tough for a lot of us because we now are working from home 100% of the time. I took this remote work checklist from Microsoft because I think it looks good, so I just put it in here. There's a link to this at the end of the slide. But for everybody who's working from home, it's kind of critical to set up your workspace. And from a team standpoint, from a networking standpoint, For the most part, Teams is not going to be the network or the any problems when you're working from home. It tends to be your microphone or your computer or video camera, things like that. I had to get a second video camera when I started working from home predominantly. So it's important to kind of set up that workspace, stay in communication often, really use your video camera. I would probably say now that I'm home all the time and everybody's home all the time, my video camera is probably on for 80% of the meetings. And that way we can see each other. Last thing, we can have fun. We can bring the team together. We do a virtual happy hour every Thursday afternoon or late afternoon here at Big Green IT, so we can all see each other. I see there's a question we hit on earlier, record your meetings. You can record all these meetings. And also that third one on the left, maintain healthy boundaries. I know it's tough because we might have kids coming in asking help for homework or work, forever because the office is right next to you. But these are some good little tricks on some work from home techniques. Security, and the question was asked about Zoom. This is a big topic right now because Zoom is being disallowed by some governments and some educations and facilities and some commercial organizations because of the security issues. Microsoft Teams is built into the Office 365 ecosystem. Therefore, everything is encrypted. All data is encrypted and all communications are encrypted. In the middle top here, you see email with the email icon. Because Microsoft Teams leverages what Microsoft calls Office 365 groups, every team and every channel has its own Office 365 group. Each group gets a mailbox. Each group gets a SharePoint files, a list of SharePoint files. And then each aspect of the Microsoft team can be governed by some advanced security tools. So on the right here, we've got some information protection tools. If you need to do any kind of e-discovery or legal hold, any archive, retention, or audit logs, those can all be applied to the Teams ecosystem, which is really important from a security standpoint. And then for those of us using Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection, that helps protect Teams as well. We use that internally here at Big Green IT. So with ATP, you get to protect your incoming emails, your attachments, and all these email phishing attacks that are on the rise now, where people are trying to trick you into logging into a website with your credentials and send money. So because Teams is completely inside and within the Office 365 ecosystem, the Office 365 Advanced Protection helps protect everything within Teams, as well as email and your files in SharePoint. Taking a step over to governance, this is what Jeff hit on a few times. It's really important to make some plans on how you deploy Teams and then how you manage Teams on a go-forward basis. The implementation process and phases are important. If you don't do anything, you're likely to get what's called team sprawl, too many teams and too many channels. So there's ways to manage this and govern this. And as Jeff mentioned earlier, with one of our customers, that they wanted a governance strategy and to just enable chat first. So we just turned on chat, but they couldn't have any teams. So no file sharing, no teams, no channels, chat first, then channels and teams second, controlled by a gatekeeper, so to speak, that allows or disallows channels to be created. And then lastly is maybe turning on some of the voice features or the conferencing features. And of course, you can do it any way you want to do it. You control your governance, and there's a lot of tools at your disposal to help with that.
Yeah, I'll jump in on just 1 second, Wade, I had, this is I guess it shows the magnitude of it. I mean, there's probably people on this call that some people have, I don't know, 10 or 15 people in their office, and there's some that have a few hundred and maybe some that have a few thousand, but we had a casino gaming customer that had 20,000 users, and they actually came to us after the fact and said, hey, how do we go backwards and put a policy in place for who can create a channel, who can do all this? And I said, well, why? Well, she goes, well, we just turned it on, and they turned it on for 20,000 users without any layout of how you go about it, who can approve a channel, who gets to be on it, who does all those things. And it's a difficult task. I know there's actually one person on this call right now that is a consulting company we work with, and that is part of their business right now, is going kind of backwards and doing these Teams audits, either after the fact and trying to put governance in place afterwards, or for those that can, have the luxury, although the luxury kind of shrunk that window by everybody having to work at home immediately a few weeks ago, where there are others, like a healthcare a customer of ours that is a customer that said, we can't wait for governance, we need to turn it on now because we need all of this collaboration from the work from home standpoint. So it's something to keep in mind. It's very important if you can, because for those of us that were through the I'll just call it the virtualization revolution, 10 or 15 years ago with VMware, and all of a sudden you had this sprawl of VMs out there because you didn't need to go procure a new computer, or you didn't need to get purchasing to do anything. You just turned up another VM, turned up 5 of them for dev, 5 of them for this, 5 of them for that, and all this thing, sudden you didn't realize you have this sprawl. Well, the same kind of thing can happen within Teams. So just keep that in mind as you go through this rollout in the adoption of this particular tool.
Thank you, Jeff. And I turn my video camera back on so we can, you can still see me as I'm talking. So, but that's the governance strategy is important, and everybody has their own style of how they want to roll it out and have governance. And the nice thing is you have granular control over all of that.
Questions?
Go ahead, one more slide. Okay, and this is a relatively new feature, and I have to applaud Microsoft for rolling this out. This is called Teams Advisor, and I wrote up in there it's in preview. Preview means that it's not fully released yet, but it's a really neat, for lack of a better word, it's a neat solution that brings all of this that we're talking about together in a kind of a wizard-based, stepwise base process for everybody to follow. This is from that demo tenant that I was showing earlier, where I was doing the interactive session with the Teams client. This is a screenshot from the Teams Admin Center, and these are the two areas it's compartmentalized Teams into. The first is chat, Teams, channels, and apps, and the second is meetings and conferences. So I took a screenshot of this saying, hey, 4 of the 8 steps have been completed, recommended steps have been completed for the Teams, for the chat, Teams, channels, and more. The View All button in the middle after 4 of 8, when you click on that, it brings up this quick assessment that the Teams advisor has done, and it's telling us, hey, 4 things have been completed, the 4 that are check marks. We'll have the check marks next to them, and then the 4 things that haven't been completed are in yellow. And this tells you, hey, these are the things that I might need to do to make my, in this case, guest access is not enabled. So while I was able to have the Megan and myself message each other, even though Big Green IT doesn't have guest access to this demo tenant, chat allows you to communicate externally. But if Megan wanted to add me to one of those channels or teams, that wouldn't be available until the guest access is enabled. So this kind of tells you right away, hey, here's where you are in your status, your journey on Teams. And then farther to the right, past the description and details, there's a view link. If you click on the view link, this gives you a set of tasks of what and how to do more of the work here to get all, if you want to get all 8 of these tasks completed. And it also includes a planner aspect. If you're not familiar with Microsoft Planner, that's a lightweight project management tool like Trello built into Office 365. So this, if you follow these steps, it'll automatically create a project plan for you. And then to the right there's all the links to everything that you need to do to get these things enabled. And some of the view details, some of those links that are in there are some of the ones that I've included in this presentation. So this came out real recent, and I've been looking at it for a number of Teams clients or Teams deployments, and I have to give 2 thumbs up to this. This is a very helpful tool to get your everything kind of set up and rolling in your Teams environment in the 2 sections, one in the chat, Teams, channels, and apps, and the other one in meetings and conferences. We're near the end of the presentation, and as I mentioned, here's a number of links. We typically include these in our Lunch and Learns and our webinars so that you don't have to go find all this stuff. It's in here, and you see at the bottom there is the Teams Advisor, which I just hit on, and above there is the governance and a few security links. If you're not familiar with Microsoft Secure Score, it's built into an Office 365 tenant and gives a objective view of your security based on some security recommendations from Microsoft. And then it tells you, hey, here's how you can increase your security posture by turning on things like multi-factor authentication, doing some log analytics and things like that. And now here we're at the end of the presentation. So this is our last slide, and we got our list of questions here. So let me turn my head to the right and start going through these questions. Before I do that, here's a list to my, we gave our email address earlier in this slide. Here's my LinkedIn address and my Twitter handle. A couple of things from Big Green IT that we can help with. And then we mentioned here we're a member of Microsoft's Partner Advisory Council, which we hit on. We are also a member of their data center optimization team, focusing on the Azure environment. And then we are also use Microsoft's Premier support. And then we're a member of the one of the worst acronyms in the world, the IAMCP, International Association of Microsoft Channel Partners. But that keeps us connected with Microsoft partners all over the world, and we can work with them on a wide variety of projects quickly because we're part of that organization. So Jeff, I'm going to go. Maybe Jeff, turn on your video camera too.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you. Let me there you go.
Okay.
I'm gonna let you read through those questions. I'll go through
Beautiful.
a couple of reminders while you're reading through those, and
Okay.
that way it'll conclude for the people that don't have questions, and thanking them for joining us today. But so the reminders are that we'll have an email follow-up. We'll have a link to the presentation. All the slides will be in there. I know I got a couple questions about, hey, the free trial slide be in there. Yeah, everything we talked about today will be in there. There'll also be a link for the upcoming webinars, which are how to roll out Teams for maximum adoption. It's a little more advanced of a webinar. That'll be in 2 weeks on the 5th of May. We have another one, how to get started with Office 365 and Teams. So if there's someone that is really at the beginning of this, which there's quite a few people out there that are still in that situation, that's going to be in 4 weeks. But if you have any questions, obviously you can get a hold of us ahead of time, either in the contact that Wade has put up on the screen, or in the email that we send out. There'll be also links in there to one of our landing pages that has a way to get on calendars. We use a product called Calendly. You can actually schedule your own free 15-minute consultation with one of our engineers or subject matter experts. It's not a salesy thing. It's we're here to help, and that's what we're trying to get across as well, is that this is a different time. I mean, we do this anyway, but everything became condensed and accelerated because of the events that are going on. So you don't have to wait for some other event to reach out to us if you need some help. Yeah, and that one's on May 19th. So Wade, you want to hit a couple of those? I will say, just in case people do start to have to go do the rest of their day jobs or answer high-end math questions for their children, I will say that thank you all for coming, and be safe and be healthy, and we're here to help you guys out. So Wade, why don't you go take a couple of those questions, and if any others
Sure.
you want to type in right now, we'll try to catch as many as we can over the next few 10-15 minutes.
I'm going to go from the bottom up since I hit a lot of the questions from the top down. Matt asked if Teams can be opened up for non-employees. The answer is yes. I happen to be on Teams for, I think, 5 or 6 different organizations. In the screenshot I showed earlier about guest access, that's what the guest access feature does, is it allows you to turn on guest access in your Teams organization and let partners, customers, you name it, come in and be part of your organization. And that's why Teams governance is important. You want to make sure that those teams and channels are secure and data is as you want it to be, because if you open it up for the external world, you might have some other compliance requirements, especially if you're in a highly regulated industry such as the pharmaceutical world or financial services. Teams governance, people like that. Teams captioning and transcript options. Captioning and transcript is built into Teams. They're relatively newer features, but it's great. You can have captions going on. You can have automatic transcription. I've done stuff with some people in foreign languages, and it's been great. I'm surprised how well it works. Is the slide deck can be sent to us? Yes, and with all the free trial information. Lynn, I know you just said you had to go, but Lynn asked about accessibility. There's a lot of accessibility features within Office 365 and Teams, and we can definitely talk about those later because it can get really in depth. But it's great to all these accessibility features are built into Teams. Janice asked a question: how does offline sync work with files that are being edited in the interim? First to save wins. We can again talk about that as well. There's if there are conflicts, the authors are prompted, but it tries to do its best to deal with conflicts automatically. Is there separate teams for education? The Office 365 licensing is different for education, and I mentioned that a little bit earlier on the slide deck. So it's the same product. There are somewhat some different features, but for the most part, it's exactly the same. It's just a different part number because of the education world. People asked if can you move files? Yes, you can move files and you can move folders. I didn't show that, but if you can do it in Teams, or it's when you synchronize the files in Teams, the top files from a team or a channel to your computer. It's easy to drag and drop, move things around, or to just do it within SharePoint. I had on earlier, yes, Teams can record and archive a webinar. And so I hit all those questions and see if there's any new ones.
You know, one of them that actually Wade it's an internal question, but I'm glad they brought it up, and that was referencing SharePoint Online and Teams. We have a project right now that's coming up, or it's just kicking off, where a company has 250 existing SharePoint sites, and they want to migrate all of those to have a Teams front end to that. Is that something that we see, or that you, I mean, I know of this one project, but is that something, Wade, that can be important for people using SharePoint?
Yeah, and so let me see if I can show this. Bear with me. Things kind of went away. I mean, the answer is back to the question. I'm going to go back to the presentation. SharePoint, a team in a channel, the files and folders that are in a team, and I briefly showed them, those are actually a SharePoint site. So all Teams is doing is actually displaying the SharePoint site. So if you change the SharePoint site, change the files or change the folders, they're automatically displayed in Teams. So Teams is really the GUI, the visualization, the UX of how all the SharePoint sites are, all the files and folders are for a Teams channel.
Wade, one that came up right in the beginning, and I might have mentioned it, and I don't know if we want to get into one product versus another, because that's not the primary focus of this, is more how to use this particular product. But someone was asking about, and maybe you'd know this better than me, Slack versus Teams, and pros and cons. Once again, I don't want to get into salesy. I think it's, in fact, maybe let me give the 100,000 foot view at this. To me, they're probably products that do, and I'm not a Slack user, but do very similar types of things. One thing that we have found is that so many customers are in a Microsoft ecosystem that Teams seems to make more sense to them, just because it ties in all the different components that they already use in a Microsoft world. Is there any other way to say that, Wade? I know if it was a sales thing, you could go into this huge, hey, here's the pros, here's the cons, here's the difference. But is there any top level type of answer we could give to that beyond what I said?
I think you hit the nail on the head. The fact that everything stays in your Office 365 ecosystem gives you that control. And then when we look at the security and governance features of Office 365 compared to some other products, the more consumer grade products, it's a little harder for them to have that security and compliance features, because more security and more compliance sometimes means a little more sophistication to logging on. Like you might have to have multi-factor authentication. So that 6-digit code we all get to our phone, things like that that make things a bit more secure. I need to close my window because the gardener showed up. Typical work from home environment.
Well, tell you what, I'll turn back my video on here. Let's go ahead and conclude this webinar for today. I think we spent a good 45 to 50 minutes. Hopefully this was useful to everyone. It was a good use of your time. And if you have more questions, you'll be able to reach out to us. And please join us for our subsequent upcoming webinars as well. We'll make them very similar style. And I appreciate it. Anything else, Wade? That good conclusion?
You know what? I'm going to answer a few more questions because
go ahead.
See if people are still here. Mike's still on the. So Mike asked a question: does the free trial include the Azure piece? The free trials we mentioned, the one I had in yellow, is the full Office 365 E1 license. So you have the full version of Teams, which is functioning. Some Teams components are in Azure, so I'm going to answer your question, a little uniquely in that yes, there is some Azure aspect to it, but it's not necessarily setting up an Azure subscription for you. That doesn't, well, it would take a little bit more effort. So we can meet afterwards. We do a lot of Azure work, and I'm curious what you're asking, but the trial does include the full Office 365 E1 license. Ramel asked about audio issues with voice calls. It's still buggy compared to other video conference solutions. It's interesting. We use it all the time, and one of the things that came over from the Skype world is the Silk protocol, which makes the call quality pretty good. For the most part, audio issues tend to be localized. I'm wearing a noise canceling headset, which costs a little bit of extra money. It works out better, makes a better quality call, but a lot of times when we troubleshoot audio issues, it ends up being the endpoint and less so the provider piece, whether that's Teams or Zoom. Thomas has some good points on education. Yes, the education E1 is free. I mentioned that they're for fee, but the education, there's a free version of education products for education customers, as they know. And there we go. So thanks to everybody for staying online we still have a lot of attendees here. And as we mentioned, we've got 2 more in this series coming up. So hopefully looking forward to seeing everybody again in 2 weeks. Until then, stay safe, stay at home best as possible, and get out and socialize the best you can, which these days tends to be video calls like this. What are they, my friends call? We've got like I said, we've got the virtual happy hour Thursdays, and some people call it wine o'clock. So they have a wine o'clock meeting. So we've all got to make the best of this world that we're living in. Jeff?
All good. Thank you. Appreciate everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great one. Bye.